Okay, so I've got another update on the Samurai, but as you can see, I got customer work filling the shop. Luckily, I've already done this work in the past, and I never really talked about it. So we got a little bit of snow last night. Shock valving. It's one of my favorite subjects on this thing, and there's really no good information out there. Nobody really shares their secrets. I'm a beginner, so I don't know everything, but I've learned enough and I want to share it. So the video that's going to follow this is me revalving these front shocks. I put a lot of miles on them just out of the box, and they were pretty good until I got the rear dialed. The rears were pretty terrible out of the box, way too stiff. And once I got the rear dialed, or still not dialed, but once I got the rear working better, then it became pretty apparent that the front needed some work. Made a huge difference. I was kind of trying to make up for the fact that I didn't have a front sway bar, and now that I do, I may take these apart again. I haven't really had it in the dirt yet with the sway bar, so I'm not sure how it's going to feel, but regardless, the information about doing the work doesn't really change. Again, I don't know why nobody really shares this information. I know there's a lot of guys, that's how they make their living, but it's a very rewarding thing to do. You know, if you spend a bunch of money on shocks and you take it out and you're not happy with the ride, I mean, that's a major part of the experience of owning something like this, and the performance. So hopefully you'll see in this, it's not hard, and it's not really something to be intimidated by. There's really the only special tool you need is a nitrogen tank with the proper regulator. Whew. It's cold out here. It's like 20 degrees and the wind's blowing again. So I'll show what I have. Super cheap stuff that I picked up. And yeah, so my biggest issue, just to kind of clarify what I was trying to attack, the front shocks were very mushy under like body roll type situations, and you know, had a ton of brake dive, and the front end would lift on acceleration. They're just real soft in the low speed movements, which is, you know, when people talk about shocks, low speed, high speed, all that kind of stuff, that's shaft speed, how fast the shaft is moving in and out of the shock, not really how fast you're driving, although those two are usually tied together. But you know, if you're flying down the road and you hit a broad corner and the car leans, that's a low speed movement. Hitting whoops or a pothole, or, you know, big square edge bumps, that's a high speed movement. And actually I was very pleased with the high speed performance of the shocks, so I was a little scared to mess with them, but I feel like I hit a pretty good compromise to where I kind of clamped down the low speed and didn't really hurt the high speed much. So I'm gonna put these past clips in here, and then I'll probably do another little follow-up at the end to kind of explain more what I did. Okay, after a couple rounds of shock tuning, I have the rear shocks feeling pretty good. So now it's finally time to play with the front. They felt pretty good out of the box, but now that the rear is working so much better, I'm starting to find the shortcomings of the front. They're a little soft. It blows through the travel pretty quick. It's got a ton of body roll. I think just the never been in these yet, so I'm curious to see. It feels like they kind of have a lot of free bleed, but we'll see. Once I get them off and take it apart, I'll show you what's inside. Okay, so once the shock is off the vehicle, take off the springs, clamp it in a vise, super garbage soft jaws I have here. You want to pull the valve core out to relieve all the pressure. And then next step is going to be pulling the seal head and pulling the shaft out. Okay, on these shocks, again, these are FOA brand. There's no set screws or anything. You just loosen this cap up and slide it up out of the way. I like to use something smooth jawed. A big crescent would work, or I really like these Nimbex pliers. And then the next step is you push the seal head down enough to expose that circlip, and then you get in there carefully with a pick and pry that guy out of there. You got to find the end and just pry it out gently. Try not to scratch the inside of the cylinder. Okay, so here we are with the shaft removed. This is the seal head. That was what was held in by that circlip. So this is commonly referred to as the seal head. This is the scraper seal cap bump stop. If you're gonna do this yourself, absolutely gotta have a set of these soft jaws for shock shafts. I got these through CarTech. I got 3 different sizes. These happen to be 3/4 inch shafts on these shocks. Already pulled, there's a plastic wear band. Plastic wear band here on the piston. So I pulled this off, just get it out of the way because sometimes they fall off. And kind of as I suspected, this shock has more free bleed. It actually has 3 free bleed holes, where my rear shocks only had 1. I kind of have a whole kit of stuff I've put together, but I have some new pistons that are blanks that don't have any free bleeds in them yet. So what I think I'm gonna do is replace these guys with a new piston with only 1 free bleed hole. So anyway, the next step is I'm gonna pull this all apart and mic out all these shims and take notes as to what they are. I really like how this thing handled in the big bumps. It just was real mushy, I guess you would say, in the corners. Like, it's just a ton of body roll. And eventually I'm going to be adding a front sway bar that'll help that out a lot. But in the meantime, I can kind of chill some of that out with slowing down the low speed damping, or restricting it some more by only having 1 hole instead of 3. And again, in the rear, these shocks are set up with only 1 free bleed. They're definitely tighter feeling, but they still ride pretty nice. Actually, from original, I did open them up 1 drill bit size of a standard drill bit set. I don't recall what that is off the top of my head, but that helped quite a bit. So I think the next step, like I said, is going to be to pull the piston off, mic all these guys out, and see where I'm at. Once I measure this out, it'll kind of give me a better idea what I'm going to do. In the rear, I have basically 10,000 shim stack, top and bottom, compression and rebound. I'm pretty happy with that. Obviously the front's not going to be the same, but that kind of gives me an idea where to go. So I'll pull this apart, measure these up, see what I got. All right, so here's the shim stack laid out. The top row is the rebound side, and those are all 10,000ths. And then you've got the piston with the 3 5/64 free bleed holes in it. And then it's got a 15,000ths stack on the compression side. So what I think I'm going to do on this one is leave the shim stack alone and drill out one of my new blank pistons with only 1 or 2 free bleed holes. I haven't quite decided yet. So what I decided to go with was with the new piston, single free bleed hole, which of course is probably on the bottom. I kept the 15,000ths compression stack, and on the rebound stack it was all 10,000ths. I wanted to keep a pretty fast rebound, so I replaced the 2 largest shims with 8,000ths and I kept the rest 10s. Kind of rough rule of thumb is the lower speed action is handled more by the larger shims and the higher speed action by the smaller shims. With a short wheelbase and a solid front axle, you want a pretty light rebound. So the front end gets back out ready for the next whoop, and to keep it from nosediving on jumps, having a fast rebound helps pop the front wheels up. So I want to keep that because that worked really well. I just wanted to slow down the low speed movements. Body roll was the biggest thing. It really would kind of fall on its side, like in rough terrain, if the terrain rocked from side to side. That was my biggest complaint with this thing, so hopefully this helps that out without making it harsh. So put this shock back together and onto the other side. Okay, so I got both the shocks put back together, charged, nitrogen, and reinstalled. It definitely feels a lot tighter. Used to be able to just grab onto the front bumper, and with your body weight, you could get this thing to move up and down like 4 to 6 inches pretty easily. Now it's a lot tighter. Feels a lot more like it should. So take it out for hopefully the next test is going to be the Rubicon Trail. I'm going to take it down. There's a Suzuki meet called Suzuki Con. If people watch this in the California area and are into samurais, they probably have heard of Amber Turner. She's the girl that races her samurai in the stock class, King of the Hammers, and she's kind of got me and a bunch of other people into doing it. She puts on an event every year on the Rubicon Trail. So I'm going to try to go this year for the first time. Been wanting to do that trail for a long time. I grew up in that area, but wasn't into this kind of stuff during that time. So never got to do it. So hopefully I can make it, and this revalve makes a big difference in the handling of this thing. Low speed, it really was okay before, but it should still help quite a bit. This may have contributed a little bit in my rollover at King of the Hammers. I dropped off a rock face and it kind of landed off to one side, and being that it just had no roll resistance in the front, I feel like that may have contributed to it flopping, but who knows. Another thing, I mean, a lot of it was driver error. I was in first gear, low range, which has just 0 wheel speed. If I was in second or third when I dropped off that face, I probably could have powered out of it. I tried to, but it, in first gear, low range, it only goes like 2 miles an hour or so. Just didn't have the speed to pull out of it, but whatever. So anyway, I'm gonna go take this thing for a drive on the road, see how it feels, and I'll let you know. Okay, so I thought I might add a little more info. So the main thing you mess with is you've got these shim stacks, they call it. So these stack up like a pyramid, and you have one on either side of the piston. Pistons are directional. There's a compression side and a rebound side. The compression side has got larger ports typically than the rebound side. So you've got to make sure not to put it back together differently than the way it was. The main kind of 2 areas, for beginners, I'd say would be just playing with your shim thicknesses. They come in 8, 10, 12, 15, and 20 thousandths thicknesses typically. I think there's some, maybe Fox, that has 6 thousandths, but 8 to 20 is kind of the normal range for most shocks. So changing, like if you go from 15s to 10s, that's a pretty big difference. You're really going to tell. And then also the free bleed, somewhere on this guy. There's a free bleed hole right there. So that bypasses both shim stacks. So lets oil flow straight through the piston. Really, the only restriction is the hole size itself. And just as an example, the back of the Samurai felt pretty good on big hits, big, jump landings, going really fast through the whoops, but was just kind of harsh on little stuff. And so these are the pistons that were in it. I pulled these out and I bought a second set to experiment with, and I drilled the same size hole. I put 3 of them in. So here, here, and here. Huge difference. It's so much more supple in the little choppy washboard and little things on out in the gravel or something. Little tiny movements. It allows the piston to move free. Free bleed is kind of where it gets the name. And I didn't mess with this. So the ultimate big hits, the free bleed runs out of flow pretty quick, and then it requires it brings these into play. So it's pretty cool. You can play with different areas. It's not just it's soft or it's stiff. There's a range you can play with. So it's pretty fun. I would say this is one of the most rewarding things to play with on the vehicle. Super easy. It takes usually, for me and my rig, takes about 2 hours to pull off, let's say the rear shocks, pull them apart, change something, put them back together, recharge them. Takes me about 2 hours. So it's not, if you plan to spend a day doing it, it's usually very easily done in one day. There's a lot of guys who take all their stuff with them out to the trail or out to the desert or whatever and spend a day doing it, and you can go through quite a few changes. Once you do it a time or two, you get pretty fast at it, and it's nothing to be intimidated by. Super easy. I would say the only thing that's really you got to be careful of in the beginning is making sure you get the shock put together correctly. There's basically, I don't know if I have an extra one. There's basically almost all shocks are built the same way. There's basically a wire clip that you saw in that video. There's one. This snap ring holds in the seal head. And so if you don't get this guy seated in the groove properly, and then you put 150 PSI of nitrogen pressure in it, you're gonna make a big mess. You're gonna have an oil geyser. That's really the only thing that's, dangerous or scary about this, is just making sure you've got that seated correctly, because that would be a bad day. And taking them apart too. Just got to be careful. Make sure before you attempt to open anything up that all the gas pressure's bled. In the reservoir, it can get a little scary if your internal floating piston O-rings are bad and nitrogen has bypassed that, because sometimes you can't bleed that all out. It'll be kind of locked in there. But that's not a normal thing. So again, like if you have a Samurai or any trail rig, I highly recommend buying some kind of shocks that are revalvable. A set of Bilstein, like 5100s or something, like for what those cost, it's only a little bit more money to buy a set of shocks that's that you can take apart and revalve. And the cool thing is, like, you'll never have to buy another set of shocks again. If they start to leak, you call up the manufacturer and you put a seal in it. They literally lifetime shocks. Say that you got a ton of miles on it and the pistons got some wear, you buy another one through FOA. This was under $20, may have been $10. The parts are cheap. A whole shim stack through FOA, it's $5. I put this whole kit together. I have basically all the thicknesses and a bunch of spare parts, seals, different pistons. I got like maybe $100 in this whole box. So you can, it's really fun, man. You can just tailor it to exactly how you want your rig to handle. I highly recommend it. And FOA, early on, and people gave them a bad time about their quality and whatever. I've been super happy with mine. No leaks, no issues whatsoever. The only problems I've had were caused by me. I bent one in a rollover, I bent a shaft, but their service was super good. Get me a new one, new parts, and the parts were all super affordable. I will buy them again. I've got another Samurai I'm going to start working on, and it's going to get FOAs on it too. Highly recommend it. And if you even just a basic Samurai on leaf springs, I put a set of 2-inch, 10-inch travel FOA reservoir shocks on the customers, and it rides amazing. And we haven't even messed with them yet. When you call to order them, if you have a good idea what the rig weighs and what you're going to use it for, the people there are pretty good at getting you set up really close out of the box. Like I said, we're going to spend a little time on his sometime soon and play with the rears. The rears are just a tiny bit harsh. I feel like he needs maybe just one more free bleed or just open the hole up a little bit, and it's going to be perfect. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. And again, I'm no shock tuning professional. I'm pretty new to this, but I'm excited because once I got over the hurdle of, being intimidated by this, it's super fun. So I would say, just do it. The only thing you really need is a nitrogen tank to refill them. Those are available from, a lot of the desert race parts places like Cartech and Poly Performance or whatever. I think Poly Performance has got one of the nicer kits. A friend of mine has that one, and it's about $400, I think. But totally worth it. Thanks for watching. If you got any questions, let me know. Again, if you could like and subscribe, that'll help a lot. I'm trying to build this channel and trying to put out more videos. I've been fabricating and building race car stuff for like 25 years. And I still struggle, trying to find information like this. There's not really too many people that share really what's going on. They'll show you how to rebuild a shock, or there'll be a video on shock valving, but they don't tell you what they did. So if you have your own, there's no information to go on. So if you guys have more questions and there's something I didn't cover or something, let me know. I'll try to go into more depth. I'm probably going to be doing my fronts again soon. So I will, if people need more clarity or more information, I'll do another video on the front shocks. All right, thanks for watching.